Still remember that action comedy movie written around the true story of the exploits of Rod Ansel back in 1986? The breathtaking film charmed us all, and that translated into a whopping $328 million USD in box office. Even the mention of its name brings a lot of nostalgia. But do you know all that you saw wasn't all there was about the movie's production? And that's what we're showing you today. Continuity errors that went unnoticed. You'll be shocked that even the most smoothed-out productions have mistakes, and so does Crocodile Dundee. While Paul Hogan charmed the big screen with his skill, as was apparent from the movie's production, yet the film's continuity errors did silently creep into many of its scenes and became part of its history. Ever notice how Mick Dundee's wardrobe has a life all its own? One second he is in his trademark crocodile skin vest and hat, the next, something is off. Watch the scene when Mick is strolling down New York's teeming streets. The color of his vest keeps changing with the cuts. It is lighter from one angle, and then, from another, it darkens. What just took place here? Well, this is one of those continuity issues that are minor but more noticeable, ones most viewers would overlook until they catch it. It's almost as if the producers hoped that nobody would be bright enough to catch on. Now, onto that infamous knife scene. That's not a knife. This is a knife. You probably remember Mick's trusty weapon, but here's what you might have overlooked. In one shot, the knife is tightly holstered at his side, and then in the next frame, voila! It's magically appeared in his hand without any movement. If you blink, you'll miss it, and once noticed, it can't be ignored. Shifting to the Australian outback, where the beauty of the wilderness plays a huge role in the movie's appeal. But here is the thing. Sometimes the outback landscape would change out of the blue. Take the scene wherein Mick is trekking the coarse environment. For the initial moments, the area surrounding him is arid and desolate. Then, in just a couple of seconds more, trees and shrubs just manifest in the background. It is almost as though the filmmakers could not decide whether to show a desert or forest, so they have just tossed these mismatched shots together. As also seen in the lead character, Sue Charlton, played by Linda Kozlowski, was central in the plot. But even the main character, Sue, had her fair share of continuity bloopers. In one particular scene, she's holding a camera around her neck. As she and Mick navigate across the outback, the camera suddenly disappears, only to reappear again a few moments after. It's one of those blink-and-you'll-miss-it kinds of moments that will pass unnoticed unless you look really closely. But wait a minute. Look closely again at the scene where Mick wrestles with the crocodile, and you'll notice something odd. One moment, Mick is grappling with the croc up close, his body positioned just inches from the beast's snapping jaws. But in the very next cut, he's several feet away, as if he's magically teleported to a safer distance. The rapid shifts in Mick's position are jarring, creating an inconsistency in the flow of the action. This editing mishap breaks the tension of the scene, leaving you wondering whether the filmmakers were trying to piece together different takes, or whether they simply hoped no one would notice the glaring shift in continuity. Either way, it's a reminder that even in the most intense moments, mistakes happen. And now that you're aware of it, you'll be watching the scene with a whole new perspective. But that's not all. The animatronics used for the crocodile, while impressive for the time, reveal their limitations upon closer inspection. The croc's movements appear stiff and mechanical in certain shots, almost as if the production team struggled to synchronize its actions with the rest of the scene. While it doesn't completely ruin the moment, it does add a layer of artificiality to an otherwise heart-pounding sequence. Now, we have been able to reveal some of the continuity mistakes that slipped through the net of Crocodile Dundee. Let's go in close to the technical on-set gaffes. From the camera equipment, which appears when it shouldn't, to wrongly timed cuts in editing, the underlying layer contains hidden faults. Let's explore those filming and technical errors left on the big screen. Filming and technical blunders. Even in the most popular classics, as it is with Crocodile Dundee, production issues and technical errors can make it through. As humorous and adventurous Crocodile Dundee may be to us, It is in those random moments of filmmaking gone wrong, that is the moments no producer probably would want shown, that make movie reruns just a little bit more interesting. Everything from sneaky cameos by the crew to lighting and sound inconsistencies adds intrigue to a repeated view of the movie. Now, let's pay closer attention to filming and technical mistakes that even Crocodile Dundee couldn't hide. It's the job of the production team to stay behind the camera, but with Crocodile Dundee, it finds itself in the shot quite often. If you look closely enough, you will find that odd instance of either the crew or one of their many bits of equipment sneaking into frame and leaving an indelible mark on what would otherwise be a totally immersive affair. One of the most caught errors includes a boom mic shadow within the scene where Mick Dundee is giving a tour to Sue Charlton around his favorite outback. The scene is smooth in the way that they share their quips and banter until you catch the shadow of the boom mic edging its way into the top corner of the frame. Subtle it may be, but catch your eye it will, and having caught it once, you cannot stop noticing it. For a film that is supposed to take you deep into the wild, the sight of production equipment pulls you right back into reality. And that boom mic wasn't the only uninvited guest. If you look way off in the distance of the shot in which Mick and Sue are traveling across the outback, a camera lens is glinting in the sun. Casual viewers miss this minor mishap, but it's a clear technical mistake that punctures the film's illusion of rugged isolation. But all films count on the magic of their editors, to say the least, in presenting a story in the best possible manner, and there are a number of transitions in Crocodile Dundee that just do not stick the landing. Some awkward cuts and poor timing between scenes take away the natural flow of this movie and snap the audience out of it. Take, for instance, the famous New York bar scene, where Mick goes to showcase his very special way of dealing with local thugs. As he reaches to disarm a streetwise punk, the movie cuts with jarring awkwardness from a close-up of the thug's face to a wide-angle shot of the whole bar. The jump-cut transition feels abrupt and out of time, cutting into the tension the scene was supposed to generate. For a film that melds action and comedy together as well as it does, these clunky cuts can strike as jarring. Indeed, one might think an editor rushed through final touches. One of those quiet moments in the film, when Mick is out walking in the outback, is just devoid of any of the background sounds of life you'd expect from this region. Instead of hearing chirps of birds and rustling of leaves, there's just an awkward silence. This is almost as if the post-production sound guys forgot to insert the ambient sound, so that what you get is a chilling feeling where there's a disconnect between what you see and hear. Even more grating are those instances when the dialogue and actors' lips aren't even in sync. In the first appearance of Mick's now iconic utterance to the would-be New York mugger, "That's not a knife, this is a knife," there's a slight yet noticeable delay in Hogan's dialogue as he says the line. Either owing to low-quality ADR or some technical glitch, this very minor timing error throws the rhythm of the scene ever so slightly askew. Lighting can make or break a movie's effect. Crocodile Dundee is no exception. Unfortunately, a couple of major lighting mistakes were made in the filming, introducing inconsistencies that subtly impacted the mood and realism of various scenes. Consider the classic outback campfire scene where Mick and Sue are sitting under the stars. It should be intimate, the firelight dancing across their faces in warm, flickering shadows. But notice the lighting doesn't even match from one shot to another. At one angle, it's soft and organic. At the next, the light is dazzlingly bright, as if a studio lamp had been hauled onto this naturalistic set. This jarring transition dissipates the imaginative ideal of a tranquil campfire and can leave an air of inconsistency which pulls you out of your quiet reverie. In fact, it is even more obvious if we would review once more the main action sequences, in which Mick fights a crocodile. The lighting suddenly shifts to another tone, starting off with soft overcast light perfect for building tension scene cuts soon after to harsh midday brightness, a juxtaposition so odd that tension can't hold. Be it due to unpredictable weather conditions or hurried schedules in the shooting of scenes, this mismatch is easily noticed. Finally, the lighting is unnatural for the middle of an action sequence. The The scene starts off really gloomy and ominous, but the instant Mick interacts with the croc, it brightens unrealistically. All tension is lost, and the scene that had been building up to be dangerous is no longer dangerous. After all the technical blunders and hidden crew cameos, we step into a little-known chapter in the making of Crocodile Dundee that is quite engrossing. The man behind the legend, a true-to-life bushman who inspired the character of Mick Dundee, had a story as interesting as the film itself. But it didn't end with Hollywood glamour. It ended in tragedy, a fact producers would rather you didn't know. Meet Rod Ansell, the real Crocodile Dundee. Long before Mick Dundee was a household name, Rod Ansell was making waves in the Australian wilderness. A survivalist in the truest sense, Ansell gained attention for an ordeal that would have made most people give up. In 1977, he was stranded for 56 days in the outback, surviving on almost nothing but his wits, a rifle, 2 dogs, and some bare essentials. Sound familiar? That's because the legend of Mick Dundee drew directly from Ansell's true experiences. But it wasn't just the survival skills that inspired the character. Much like Mick, Ansell had a larger-than-life personality, a rugged, no-nonsense approach to life, and a love for the Australian wilderness. Whether hunting crocodiles or surviving off the land, Ansell embodied the outback spirit. His experiences fascinated the public, and he even appeared on television shows to recount his story, leading to widespread media attention. Ansell's barefoot lifestyle, disdain for opulence, and his rugged charm all inspired the creation of Mick Dundee. He famously refused to wear shoes unless absolutely necessary, and reports of him sleeping on the floor of a luxury hotel room because he wasn't used to beds caught the ear of actor-writer Paul Hogan. Hogan took Ansell's wild adventures and bushman persona and wove them into the screenplay that would become Crocodile Dundee. The film was an instantaneous box office sensation upon its release in 1986, grossing more than $328 million worldwide. But while Mick Dundee became an instant icon, Rod Ansell got little recognition or appreciation for his part. He would receive no royalties or credit whatsoever from the movie. As a matter of fact, a lot of people didn't even know there was a real man behind the character in the first place. Ansell wasn't himself bitter about it, at least not at first. He once said that he was happy to spend his life away from Hollywood glitz and preferred the quiet isolation of the outback. But as the years wore on, the attention he never desired began to wear him down. Despite his hate for capitalizing on his relationship with the movie, Ansell increasingly fell out of step with a contemporary world, which would ultimately contribute to his tragic demise. Contrary to the lighthearted and comic adventures of Mick Dundee, the life of Rod Ansell took a dark turn. After an almost decade-long battle with legal issues, personal problems, and increasing disillusionment, in 1999, Ansell got into a violent confrontation with police that would ultimately result in his death in a shootout. From what started as something many would deem as a minor confrontation, it escalated to a full-scale shootout where Ansell would meet such a tragic end. An ending far removed from the outback life that was romanticized in Crocodile Dundee. This is a contrast happy-go-lucky movie persona versus the harsher reality of Ansell's life that the producers of the film likely hoped to keep separate from the movie's legacy. It is a reminder that even the most heroic of on-screen characters can have complex and troubled inspirations, especially for someone like Rod Ansell who never asked for fame. Perhaps he never wanted it because he knew he couldn't handle it, as it would turn out to be a very terrible asset for him to have. Slip-ups and on-screen blunders by the actors. Even the largest actors have moments of falling off, and so did Crocodile Dundee. Paul Hogan, the film's star and one of the writers of the script, has a very laid-back comic style. There were moments on set, however, when that laid-backness went a bit too far. Sometimes Hogan would ad-lib lines or bits of business without remaining in character during takes and catch the rest of the cast and crew by surprise. Actually, many of those ad-libs were allowed in the final version of the movie and contributed to the charm of Mick Dundee. To name but one iconic example, One thinks of the famous knife scene when Mick Dundee proudly flashes his larger-than-life blade and utters the unforgettable line, "That's not a knife, that's a knife." Few realize that this was a line totally ad-libbed. Hogan's quick wit turned what could have been a rather nondescript encounter into one of the most memorable moments in the film. The producers were so enamored with the spontaneity of it all that, though unscripted, they left it in. Supporting actors weren't above making mistakes either. Linda Kozlowski, who played Sue Charlton, had a hard time not cracking up during many of the more light-hearted scenes, especially in the New York parts. Actually, some of her reactions weren't scripted at all, but real reactions to Hogan's improvisations. Of course, it seems like there was so much great chemistry between Kozlowski and Hogan because so many of their interactions weren't scripted to flawless perfection. Improvisation created some of the best scenes in Crocodile Dundee. Paul Hogan was a master at taking any scene and on the fly introduced humor into it. His background in comedy gave him an edge with which even the most ordinary lines could become something that would have stuck in audiences' minds long after the credits rolled. Soon enough, the crew learned to just keep the cameras rolling during times when the official take was done, because Hogan would often deliver gold within these unscripted moments. One of the more infamous instances regarding this happened during Mick Dundee's first exposure with New York City culture. Improvisation played a big role in the scene where he finds a transvestite in a bar, then proceeds to check whether it is a man or woman. Though to some modern sensibilities the scene may have seemed decidedly problematic, it was also among the most quoted and replayed comic bits of the film upon release. Hogan's off-the-cuff reactions really gave this film an air of authenticity, even during the most absurd moments. How the bloopers shaped the film's legacy. Interestingly, these bloopers, slip-ups, and technical mistakes not only did not diminish its success, but almost became part of the enduring appeal of Crocodile Dundee. These imperfections charmed audiences first in Australia and then overseas, embracing the authenticity of these human moments. The larger-than-life Mick Dundee was brought to real likeness, a real person who can fumble through the little idiosyncrasies of life, just like the rest of us. It is this earthly aspect that finally connected with audiences. Another factor not really expected to influence the success of the film so much was that it was released in two versions, tailor-made. As stated, some pointedly edited versions of Crocodile Dundee were made to suit both Australian and international tastes. The changes were minor but effective. Australian slang and humor, perhaps too parochial for American tastes, had been minimized or otherwise reworked to be more general in appeal. However, even with these changes, the core of the film remained there, and was also allowed to retain its unique charm while it was crossing cultural barriers. In this hypercriticism, internet-driven age, such bloopers and mishaps would doubtless fall under the virally charged spotlight of social media. Memes or threads of viral posts might only sometimes draw more attention to the flaws rather than the heart of the story. But in 1986, audiences were more lenient, if they even spotted the errors in the first place. For most people, small flaws such as these gave a quality of realism to the movie, and only added to its appeal, thereby assuring it a place within the pantheon of beloved favorites. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to this channel for more awesome videos like this. Like and share with your friends.